Hello, I'm Enzo, and today I'll be beating Borderlands 4. Starting out, I haven't really seen any of the trailers or gameplay, mostly because I wanted to go into this run blind. The only thing I looked at before I started was the characters and their skill trees. As you can probably guess, I went right for Rafa, as his red skill tree immediately caught my attention. We start out in the Timekeeper's prison, where we get a bolt put into our spine so the Timekeeper can control us. He's the new villain, by the way. We're also on a new planet called Kairos. Before anything else can happen, the wall in front of us explodes and a new guy is here to break us out. This fast start is absolutely the way to go, just like the pre-sequel. There's no waiting around, you just get right into the action. I love it. After dealing with a few enemies, RJ gives us a rep kit, and this is the new healing system. There's still lifesteal and regeneration and stuff like that from skills, but now you have a heal that you can use on a cooldown, just like healing potions in other games. This is definitely one of the best changes that they've made, especially for early game. I also forgot to mention that the starter pistol is from a new manufacturer called Daedalus. Their whole thing is being able to swap between ammo types, in this case, pistol ammo and SMG ammo. It's super neat, and you can get some cool combinations later on. Apparently, this is a respawn station. I really have to get used to new stuff, cause I thought this was a shop at first. In the story, apparently Elpis, Pandora's moon, teleported to Kairos 6 years ago. And that's exactly what happened at the end of Borderlands 3, so this is, well, 3 years after Borderlands 3. I honestly had no clue how the story would continue at Borderlands 3, but definitely stay tuned because it is done incredibly well. If the combat looks difficult, well, I am playing on the hard setting, since I want to see how difficult it would be. It's very apparent early on, since I can't run into tons of enemies without dying, which is, my entire playstyle, but honestly, the hard difficulty is barely noticeable later on. Next up, we unlock a super important mechanic, grappling. This is used on the new grapple points to, grapple to it and reach other higher areas. It's also important later on to open vents and stuff like that, remove objects for missions, and grab items from long range, which is pretty neat. I did put a part about swimming in the script, but I kind of forgot there was this little section right at the beginning. Pretty crazy new mechanic, especially for a Borderlands game. From this container, I got super lucky and found an early shield, which is awesome, because I didn't get my next shield for a tiny bit. A little bit later, I finally got to the first boss, which is the warden that we saw at the start of the story. I have to say though, easiest starting boss ever, especially for the hardest difficulty. It was quite a joke of a fight, especially considering you can't come back here and farm him, which kinda sucks but makes sense. After that, I went to revive RJ, but then the story plays, and the Timekeeper uses the bolt, that triangle thing we got at the beginning of the game, to take over my character and try to kill RJ. RJ transfers his Echo 4 over to me to jam the bolt. The only problem is that it's no longer jamming RJ, which means he gets taken over by the Timekeeper. And obviously, only one of us is going to make it out of this, so that's a bit unfortunate. However, it's a super interesting start to the game. I mean, already, the story is infinitely better than Borderlands 3. And from everything I've seen just so far in the tutorial level, I absolutely love this game. They have finally done it right. I have to say, this story at the start, it totally reminds me of the intro to like a Far Cry game. That's exactly what it makes me think of. So obviously, it's perfect. After that, we appear washed up on a beach, where, of course, we meet Claptrap. After a ton of dialogue and walking around, it's time to get back to killing enemies, and continue with the main mission. Since I'm level 2, I can finally use my action skill. In this game, each character has 3 action skills to choose from. Each one has their own corresponding skill tree. Like I said earlier, I'm going for Rafa's red tree, which means I'll be using his Peacebreaker cannons. They're pretty much 2 extra guns that shoot at enemies in the direction you're facing. Kind of like turrets, but not exactly. Either way, they are super awesome, powerful, and great for dealing with flying enemies, which there are quite a few of at the start. There are so many new things and mechanics in this game, so give me a little bit to explain everything. But let's talk about the new ordnance system. Just like the new healing system, your grenades have a cooldown instead of a capacity like the other games. I heard that this was done so that you actually use your grenades more often, and rocket launchers, and apparently machine guns, which aren't that great compared to grenades and rocket launchers, but still neat. In the previous games, what you would normally do is just like stockpile all of your grenades and rockets until like a boss or difficult enemy and then spam them. But now the game wants you to just use this in normal combat. And this system is so much better than before because it's super fun to just keep throwing out grenades in combat instead of having to preserve them like a rare resource. So yeah, another amazing change to this game. Not to mention, because of all the new part systems, there are some insanely awesome grenade combos that I've found throughout this entire run. It gets pretty cool. As you can see, I absolutely love this game already, and it might just be the best Borderlands game yet. I say that because I found this gun, which I noticed was a Vladof SMG. That's definitely not in the other games, by the way. I literally said, since I was streaming this at the beginning, this feels wrong, but once I started using it, it felt so right. This gun is just awesome, thanks to Vladov's crazy fire rate, and obviously being an SMG. So I love this thing, and I wanted to use it more, but I happened to get an even cooler gun just a few seconds later. A Vladov assault rifle, but with Torg sticky explosives. So this is an early example of the new licensed part system. Basically, you can get parts from different manufacturers on guns that aren't theirs. And if you couldn't guess, this is as powerful as it sounds. The sticky explosive bullets deal more damage for each one on the enemy, which is crazy enough. And they explode one by one when you reload or swap weapons. If that doesn't want to make you play this game, then, well, just wait. There are some even more insane combinations later on. This gun also has an underbarrel shotgun, which can apply even more bullets, making it even more broken. This combination is the main reason I melted the first real boss. Like I said, the Warden was just a tutorial. I got a cool rep kit from this guy, which rep kits are the healing consumables. It's also an item in your inventory, just like a class mod or relic. Okay, there aren't relics in the game, but I'll get to that later on. These can also have all sorts of perks, but this one is my favorite. The rep kit doesn't heal as much, but for a limited time, you deal more damage. However, you also take more damage, which balances it out. High risk, high reward is exactly how I like to play. After that, I unlocked another new mechanic. This is the glide pack. On stream, I also said that a Destiny-like glide would be super neat. And guess what? They literally added that exact idea to this game, and it is so perfect. Gliding feels so nice with this. Borderlands 4 easily has the best movement out of all of the games. This is thanks to the built-in double jump, which I forgot to mention, the glide that this pack gives you, and also the small dash that it gives you. You only get 2 dashes with the capacity, but it can be super useful for boss fights. And that's not even counting the glide. There's also a ton of climbing in this game. There are like special walls that you can climb to get up to different areas for missions and stuff like that. And some very rare swimming. What I find funny is that going into water in most other Borderlands games would literally just kill you instead. So it's pretty neat. This gun that I'm using now is from the Order, which is the Timekeepers faction, and the other new manufacturer. Most of their guns can charge up a bunch of shots that fire at the same time, either as one or multiple projectiles to deal a ton of damage. It's a neat gimmick, but charged weapons aren't my thing at all. You might also notice that this is my third gun. Borderlands 4 changes how you unlock other slots, and it is so much better than the other games. Instead of story progression, you unlock new slots based on level. In this case, gun slot 3 is from level 5, slot 4 is level 10, and on top of that, there are 2 other slots locked to level 15 and 20, but those aren't for guns. I'll get to those other slots when the time comes. So far, we have rep kit, shields, and grenades unlocked. Yeah, I am still not even close to explaining everything in this game, by the way. There is still a lot to learn. I've been working my way to a new main base called a safe house. There are a few of these throughout the map, and they require you to find a data pad and then a console to activate them. Once activated, we get the classic vending machines. Shields, rep kits, and all that good stuff are from Zeds. Guns, grenades, and ammo are all from Zane's? Yeah, that's right. Zane from Borderlands 3 runs the vending machines on Kairos. No clue where Marcus is. Marcus isn't in the story of this game, he's only the narrator. And his voice actor voices another character, but that's completely unrelated. It's also a side mission, so definitely does not matter for the story. Another neat thing you'll find in safe houses and silos later on is the bounty board. The bounty board gives you contracts, which are either kill a tough enemy, collect stuff from enemies, just kill enemies, find a hidden thing, or bring something back to the bounty board. Some of these are super annoying, like bringing stuff back to the bounty board, but either way, all contracts are really good XP. So I was going for one of the contracts, which was the difficult target, and I unfortunately died. This is my first death, and here's the mandatory rip one life joke. I also have to say that I hate flying enemies. They are always my least favorite. Another thing to mention is that enemies in this game will sometimes spawn with modifiers. You see, that's actually an endgame thing in Borderlands 3 in Wonderlands, but completely normal from the beginning of the game here. I'm guessing it's also based on the difficulty you choose, because a lot of the enemies I fought had modifiers. And that's not even to mention the fact that most enemies can spawn with a certain element. I mean, if you have any Borderlands knowledge at all, you should know that you can't use the same element that the enemy has because they'll either resist or be immune to it, so you deal less or no damage to them, which means you have to change up your element to counter them. Besides that, most of the modifiers in here are relatively easy to deal with. This enemy had chromatic, which makes the enemy change their elemental type, which is actually super interesting, I have to admit. I don't mind chromatic at all, but there are 2 that I absolutely hate. Elemental Eater is my least favorite because that allows enemies to heal when you damage them with their elemental type. You will learn to hate it very quickly, but most of the time it's not a problem. The other one I don't like is called Vampiric, which, as the name suggests, gives the enemies lifesteal. They can heal a tiny bit, but it's not actually that bad. It can only be a problem like endgame when the enemies actually start to deal damage. For now, I'm just having fun playing the game. I'm wandering around just killing enemies. I picked up a couple of side missions which are pretty fun. However, what I definitely should have done is the next story mission here, Down and Outbound. You really want to do that side mission because that's what actually unlocks your vehicle, which is quite important because it helps you get around so much faster. I mean, obviously, but yeah, that was definitely the play, not this exploring. Not yet, at least. I managed to find this place, which I couldn't really tell what it was at first, but it's some sort of abandoned mine. And I didn't understand what this message meant at the time, but it's obvious I'm gonna have to come back here later. What's hilarious is that I actually forgot about this place until the absolute end of the game. Well, actually, after I beat the game and everything like that. This is one of the last things I cleared out. But pretty much, I'm gonna have to do a bunch of story missions to get access to places like this. You'll see that with quite a few places and missions in this game. You gotta do other stuff to unlock them. I'll have a couple of examples later on, but this game has some awesome side missions in it, and I haven't even done many side missions. This one is the classic UFO abducting a cow, or in this case, the wild horns. Yeah, it's a pretty funny one. A little bit later, I found this massive glowing dome. I forgot exactly what these are called, like world events or something like that, but pretty much these domes have a mini boss inside of them. Obviously, these mini bosses are great for XP and potentially some good loot, so you know I had to try and challenge this. The fight was incredibly difficult because, you know, it's a mini boss, and this is super early on. I don't exactly have great gear just yet, and since I haven't played this enough yet, my aim is still warming up. But as you can see, even with this low-level assault rifle, yes, it's the same sticky bullet assault rifle, this thing just chews through enemies. It is so powerful. In the end, it was an incredibly tough fight, but I got all sorts of cool stuff from it. No legendary though. That is quite unfortunate. I'm really hoping to get a legendary at some point to see what they can do, but obviously they learned their lesson from Borderlands 3, and legendary drop rates are incredibly rare. I would put it way closer to pre-sequel drop rates. If you've played the pre-sequel, you know how bad legendary drop rates are in there. Like, I'm not even kidding, that's how bad they are here. And throughout the map, there are an incredible amount of collectibles that you can do. The one I just completed is an Evocarium or something like that. Pretty much you have to go collect a bunch of things and you get some siren story. There's also vault symbols that have been brought back, items that you can collect, echoes and stuff like that. It's all pretty cool. But the main reason you actually want to get collectibles is because they actually give you SDU tokens. Yes, that's another big thing they changed in here. Instead of using money or iridium to buy SDU slots, you can actually use SDU tokens, which you get by, you actually have to go around the map getting collectibles, safe houses and silos, and some other stuff will give you them. You can take these tokens and then upgrade all of your ammo slots, your backpack, stuff like that. It's a way better system, and it's way easier to get SDU slots now. Besides swimming, this spot on the map actually explains another neat mechanic very well. It's like a super tiny thing that I didn't even use much, even though I've meant to several times at this point. You can actually fish a little bit in this game. In some areas with deep water, you'll actually get a prompt to grapple inside the water where you can actually catch fish. I mean, the fish and junk you get doesn't do anything, but you can occasionally get weapons and stuff like that. And I think we all know what this means, by the way. Can you beat Borderlands 4 with only fishing? I'm probably not the first person to get this idea, but I definitely have to make that a run at some point. This is another thing that counts as a collectible, a propaganda speaker. Pretty much, you need to send out your Echo 4 to hack it, and you have to defend him. I say defend, but what really happens is you're going to get like 4 waves of enemies to deal with, and that's pretty much it. I think it might be 3. Most of the stuff in this game goes by the rule of 3, and I noticed that very quickly, but 3 is always the perfect number of times to do stuff. Here's a great example of a silo. I just found this while wandering around. I still haven't done the main mission that I really should, but yeah, silos are the easier ones because you literally just have to clear out the enemies, and boom, that's it, you can claim it. I get my SDU tokens, I get access to vending machines, it's all good. So you guys know how Elpis is currently orbiting Kairos? Yeah, we now have a Thresher problem. If you guys didn't know, Threshers actually originate from Elpis. If you're wondering how they're on Pandora in Borderlands 2, well, you gotta play the pre-sequel. There's a side mission where you ship over a couple of Threshers to Hammerlock. Obviously, they get loose. One is called Terramorphous, and that's why Threshers now inhabit Pandora. I'm guessing the same thing happened here, since obviously parts of Elpis have impacted Kairos. One of the chunks probably brought some Threshers with it. So yeah, we're gonna have to deal with them now. Threshers are one of my least favorite enemies because they're incredibly difficult to deal with. This game makes them so much worse than before. Like, if you thought Threshers were annoying in Borderlands 2, you just gotta play Borderlands 4. Then you'll realize they're not too bad in 2. Not to mention the fact they can have elements and modifiers and stuff like that, and they are so much more difficult than before. They also like to hide underground way more often. This is the next part of the story. After killing a bunch of enemies, I meet this guy, Rush. He's not a main character, he still is just a side story character, but again, the story writing and especially the characters are so much better in this game than Borderlands 3. Like, they're all incredibly well written, just good characters in general. Like with most things in this game, they've definitely learned from their mistakes from Borderlands 3. This mission is incredibly important to do because it unlocks all sorts of good and useful stuff. First of all, this is like a new main base that you can use. There's a little bounty board there, vending machines, a respec machine, which costs 1/10 of your money. It's annoying, but useful if you need it. The bank and lost loot machine. There's also a locked machine here, which I'll get at the end of the game. Final thing that I forgot about is the decryption station. This is one of the collectible things. Pretty much you'll find like these tablets that you have to carry all the way back to one of these. It's super annoying, but you'll get some good loot out of it. A couple of you might be wondering where the customization is. Well, instead of a customization station, we only get a respec machine now. Customization is now done through a tab in your inventory. Obviously, I don't care too much about it. I literally have not changed anything just yet. I will a bit later on, but again, not a big deal. What is a big deal is the fact I just unlocked my Digi-Runner. This is the new vehicle system that you can use. So instead of having to go to a station to spawn a car, you can literally use your car anywhere. Well, just about anywhere. Obviously, there are some areas you can't use your car for missions and stuff like that. Besides that though, you can just spawn your car, cruise to wherever you want, get off, kill enemies, spawn your car, and it infinitely repeats. Obviously, I just had to figure out what keybind it was to do it first. I've changed up my keybinds just a tiny bit, and I honestly can't remember what the normal one is, but I use my middle mouse button to swap gun modes or ammo types. And now that I think about it, I've done so much talking, I don't think I've even mentioned one of the best quality of life changes in this game. You can now use your alternate interact button to pick up loot as junk. It is so cool. So you pick up all the loot that you want to sell using the alternate key, and it automatically marks it as junk. And when you go to any vending machine, you just hit the same button, and boom, it sells all your junk. It is so much better. Besides the order enemies and, well, wildlife, but they don't really count, the main enemy faction is Rippers. These are all the like bandits and psychos and stuff like that. They're called Rippers because, well, they've ripped out their bolts. And as explained early on, either two things happen when you rip out your bolt. You either go insane or die. And obviously all of these are the ones that have gone insane. So that's how this enemy faction is explained. I've also found this neat area. This is called a crawler. Pretty much you have to pick up a power cell and bring it from one place to another. It's almost like a mini puzzle in a way. And the placements of both the dispenser and the input for the energy cell dispenser and thing you gotta actually place it in always differ, and they get more difficult as you go further into the map. But this one was super easy because it's early on. Once you've placed the energy cell, you gotta find your way around the crawler all the way to the top. Once you get to the top, you can use your grapple to pull off a panel, and you get a cosmetic, which I don't care about, but you get 40 SD tokens, which is a ton. That's what I'm actually here for. I guess I really haven't shown my skill tree much at this point, but once you have 5 points in the first tier, you actually unlock 2 augments. You can only use one at a time. At the beginning, I went for the right augment, which gives you ammo regeneration. It's not that good. I tried out the bottom 3, but in the end, I actually settled with the top left augment, which actually gives you more action skill duration when you kill an enemy, but it causes your action skill to deplete faster. But either way, that is definitely my favorite one. As for skills, I went for the middle because it increases my fire rate and the fire rate of my Peacebreaker cannons, so it's really good. The second tier skill I went for gives me, I think it's like 20% shield when I kill an enemy, which is very helpful. But here's where things get awesome. The next tier I'm going for, I think it's the right skill. It actually increases my damage the fuller my shield is. It's pretty awesome. But the best part is when your shield is completely full, the bonus is doubled. And I think it's like 10% damage per level, which is insane. So I get 30% damage, and if that's doubled, 60%. It's almost like I have a bee shield. It's a really awesome skill. That's one of the reasons I went red tree. You know, I played so much that at this point I completely forgot this dude was a boss. I guess I'll have to come back and farm him at some point. You'll probably notice a few other odd things on screen. First of all, what happened to my shield? Isn't a shield supposed to be blue? Well, in Borderlands 4, they've added a second type of shield. Blue shields are called energy shields. Yellow shields are, well, armor shields. It's pretty awesome. Instead of recharging when you don't take damage for a little bit, these ones are actually recharging constantly, but they recharge in segments. So when one segment is depleted, it will be recharged. But then you gotta wait for the yellow bar at the top to finish up. I'm guessing you're also super curious about the grenade that I'm using. Or, well, ordnance. It's kind of a grenade because it did drop MIRVs, but I'm actually using throwing knives. They're pretty awesome. When I first saw it, I noticed it was a Jacob's ordnance, and I was like, what the heck is that? That's cursed. A Jacob's grenade? But no, it's not an actual grenade. It is a throwing knife. These are super cool because they can hit crit enemies, and they can have all sorts of crazy effects. I'll show you guys a bit later on when I find a super powerful one. But I did manage to find a really good Torg grenade. This is actually a bouncing Betty, pretty much, but the artillery grenades in this game, which are bouncing Bettys from Borderlands 2, are really good. They're so much better. And while I was looking through my inventory, it's only now that I realized there's this reward screen where you get all sorts of cosmetics and then guns from completing missions and stuff like that. I wish I had noticed this earlier, but thankfully, any gear that you get from this menu is always scaled to your level. Now, there are these 2 packs that I didn't want to open. However, I learned at the end, when I finally opened them, that it is character specific. One of those packs is a pre-order bonus, and the other's a shift code I used. So yeah, that's pretty important. Even though I don't care about customization most of the time, there is this one thing, which is super neat. You can actually change stuff about your vehicle. So you get different hover drives by doing challenges, aka killing a ton of enemies for each manufacturer. I've gotten a lot of Vladof and Torg because those are 2 of my favorites. Actually, I think Torg is my favorite, Jacobs is second, Vladof third. But I love all 3 of those. Anyways, I've gone mostly with Vladof and Torg for my hover drive because they have the fastest vehicle speed and best acceleration. All of the other ones are kind of mixed, but usually with like better handling and stuff like that. But why would you ever go for like handling when you can go for speed and acceleration? That last boss in the story wasn't too interesting. It was literally just go to a place, find this boss, and kill him. But finally, we get another new character, and this is so much more interesting. This is an Order scientist called Zandra. As you can probably guess, she's quite important to the story. You see, I was originally going to call her like knockoff Tannis, and I'll admit she kind of is, because it's only at this point that I thought about it, but Tannis isn't actually in this game, or in the story, anywhere on Kairos. Honestly, no clue what she's up to at this point, but I'm guessing we'll see her in the next Borderlands game. Either way, Zandra gets kidnapped by the Order, and we're going to have to go rescue her. Classic. I also waited till the credits to make sure, and her voice actor is Kirsten Potter? I'm guessing I butchered her name. I'm sorry if I did. I am notoriously bad at pronouncing people's names. She also voices Caitlyn in League of Legends and Marasov in Destiny 2. So I guess that makes some sense why her voice does sound familiar. Pretty neat. Another great change that this game makes is obviously the writing. They definitely learned from their mistakes in Borderlands 3. And more importantly, hired people that actually deserve the jobs and know what they're doing. But the humor in Borderlands 3 is a lot more adult than anything else, but also sometimes like dark and a little bit gross occasionally. Like this mission, I actually find this section really funny, where in order to get into the facility, you actually have to drench yourself in like meat juices from the wild horns to be recognized by the scanner as a wild horn. So I think that's pretty funny. I haven't done a ton of side missions in this run, but the few that I have are pretty funny. Well, for the most part. When it's not just like 99% talking and waiting around. That is, unfortunately, a lot of side missions. Anyways, I helped Zandra to escape the facility, and we were going to fast travel out, but unfortunately the modifications only allowed her to fast travel. Of course. I mean, this was a massive arena looking place, so naturally there is going to be a boss. I mean, there were waves of enemies before this, but nothing I couldn't handle. So, what is the boss, you ask? Knockoff Bloodwing or knockoff RK5? That's right, we've got a mandatory flying boss. Now that I think about it, I hope this guy doesn't have any good drops, because farming him would be super annoying. But overall, the fight wasn't too bad. My build is still super powerful, and I have this awesome Daedalus shotgun that can fire sniper bullets as well. Daedalus makes some really good weapon combos. So this entire time, we've been limited to the bottom left section of the map. But at this point, it's finally revealed that we're going to have to defeat 3, lieutenants, kind of sub-bosses of the Timekeeper to be able to unlock the Timekeeper fight in the end. And the map is pretty much split into thirds. There's a giant circle in the middle that's the Dominion, aka the Timekeeper's city and, whole area. The bottom left area is more like a nature-filled kind of plains, but also farmland area. And its boss is Idolator Soul. He's who I'm going to go after first. However, I can also go to the top left, which is more like a desert area, a lot like, classic Pandora desert. The boss there is Callus. Eventually, I did deal with her. She was the second boss I went for. And the third area is the top right of the map, which is a whole, mountainous region. It's really annoying, but it looks really cool. I don't know the exact inspiration for it, but I want to say, Tibet or some mountainous region like that. I'm not completely sure. It still just looks super cool. And the boss there is Vile Lictor. So look forward to that. I'm also saying all of this because we actually unlock the top left and right parts of the map now. You're not able to travel to them until you get to this point in the story. A while later, near the bottom right of the map, I found this other area. This is called a drill site, and you'll notice that a lot of these enemies have Queen at the beginning of their name. Well, yes, Callus, the woman in the top left, she controls the Ripper faction. She is literally the Ripper Queen. That's the whole top left deal. The top right is more filled with order enemies. The bottom of the map is kind of a mix of the two. Anyways, these drill sites are awesome because it spawns a couple of waves of enemies and then bosses. Okay, sometimes it's multiple bosses like this, sometimes it's just one. It really depends on the site. Either way, these bosses all have their own drops and are a great source of legendaries. And I know, guys, I still haven't gotten to how the respawning bosses work because I literally didn't use it for a very long time. I knew it was a thing, I just forgot to use it, I guess. And you're probably wondering why I haven't shown off any legendaries. I did not get a single legendary until 7 hours, when I actually started farming for it. Well, okay, let me be more specific. A legendary I can use. A little bit more story and clearing out this massive place later on. This is when another very important mechanic comes into play. You have to do some missions to actually unlock different parts of the game. Well, this is when we unlock one of those mechanics. Pretty much all throughout the map, there are these order bunkers. Very similar to the mines where you have to clear out an entire place and there's a boss at the end. But to actually open up the order bunkers, I need to open their doors first. Unfortunately, the doors are closed by a special type of bioarmor. You literally cannot destroy it. Normally, of course. So now, I've finally unlocked access to these gas containers. This stuff is called Locust, and it turns, organic matter into an impenetrable armor. I mean, scary sounding stuff, but also super cool at the same time. Either way, these gas bombs can be used to destroy that bioarmor. So now I can open up order bunkers all throughout the map, and more importantly, doors in this mission, as you can very clearly see here. And as you can probably guess, this is the bottom area's whole gimmick at this point. And yeah, I need to use these gas containers to damage the boss of this area. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. The game introduces a new mechanic and forces you to use it. But yeah, this bio bulkhead is literally invincible until I damage it with one of these gas bombs. I mean, it makes plenty of sense and it's easy enough. Another thing you might be able to guess is that Idolator Soul, the big boss I'm gonna have to deal with later on, yeah, he also has this mechanic. It's incredibly annoying, especially for his fight, but we'll get there. I've also been using one of the other ordnance types, that is the minigun. They're pretty cool, but honestly, the minigun ordinances are the worst out of all of them. Maybe like higher rarities with special modifiers would be better, but yeah, they're pretty bad. I still prefer grenades. Grenades are definitely my favorite with crazy combos. Looking back at the footage now, I guess I misspoke earlier on when I was talking about not getting a legendary. Yes, I am 7 hours in, and this is my first legendary. I guess the ones I got later on were, class mods. My first actual legendary is this thing, the Sho Kunai. It's one of the Jacob's grenades, so it's a throwing knife, and the whole legendary effect seems to be you get 7 charges. I mean, that's pretty cool. It's a neat legendary and all, but I have no clue what it's supposed to be a reference to. The only thing I can probably think of is like Toho or something like that. I mean, obviously it's kunai, so it's Japanese. I just don't know like what game or what else it would be referencing. And as cool as this stuff sounds, I think it's like garbage. These throwing knives are so terrible. They don't seem to do much damage at all, but I guess you're supposed to hit crits with them. Maybe that's when they come in handy, but yeah, they're pretty bad. What's funny is that the Jacob's throwing knives can actually be one of the most powerful ordinances in the game. It's just these ones that aren't that great. A little bit later on, I happened to find this thing that I just grappled up. This is another collectible. I don't actually remember what these things are called, but they are marked on the map. Either way, this is the most annoying type because you actually have to bring one of these back to the decryption station. Also, Claptrap talks to you when you have it the entire time, which is incredibly annoying. But the funny thing is, I think there's actually a setting to mute Claptrap, so that's always an option. I guess you use it when you're looking for these. But yeah, you get some SD points and a bunch of loot. It's usually just blues and greens, but I've only done a couple of these. Maybe you can get a legendary, but I'm definitely not that lucky. Alright, are you guys ready for one of my favorite parts of the game? It's in this mission, Hangover Helper, which is pretty funny in its own right. But this is just okay, the second best part. My favorite part of the game is actually closely related to this reference. Anyways, when I was heading to this area, I noticed something immediately in their music. Can you guys hear that? Alright, I know it's partially just me that knows this reference, but do you guys know what this song is? It made me so happy to hear this. This song is literally Mainframe from Borderlands the pre-sequel. The funny thing is that they literally made this song for a single mission in the pre-sequel. It's called You Can Stop the Music. I found that just absolutely awesome. I mean, if I didn't love the game this much already, I absolutely do now. Also, it's not the English version of Mainframe. I think this is the French version from how it sounds. I think it's in English, Dutch, Japanese, and French or something like that. So that is just awesome. Another funny thing is that one of Rafa's lines is actually a pre-sequel reference as well. I think it's boundaries, people. It ain't rocket surgery, which, it ain't rocket surgery is one of the missions in the pre-sequel. Yeah, you guys can probably tell how much I like all of this. And depending on the mission, I don't know if main missions are better or what side missions, but you can actually get legendary rewards out of them. I usually don't because I'm not that lucky, but I did happen to get the Roach. This is a legendary Torgue pistol, interestingly enough, and it's got a pretty neat mechanic. Whenever you hit a living target, well, both living and so these Rippers are the best example, it spawns additional projectiles that then seek other targets. Actually, I think they can come back around to the same target you hit, but it usually goes for other enemies. Either way, it's a super neat pistol, and obviously a Rad Roach reference. I'm guessing from Fallout, but I believe it's a 3D artist that also goes by that name. How do I know this? Let's just say sometimes knowledge is a curse. Anyways, it's a pretty neat gun, and decently powerful, at least at this point, but unfortunately it kind of sucks later on. Especially considering it doesn't work against most Order enemies because they're mostly robots and stuff. Besides the SU tokens, the main reason you actually want to unlock the silos is because they can reveal vault key fragments and eventually the vaults. I mean, yes, this is a Borderlands game. A big part of it is hunting vaults. In this game, there are 4 vaults in total. Obviously, there's one at the end that the Timekeeper controls, but there are 3 smaller ones before that. There's one in each region of the map, and to open them, you have to first find 3 fragments before you can actually get the entrance. Obviously, 3 fragments makes a key, and you need the key to actually, well, open up the vault and go inside. I was going to show off where all the pieces are, but they're relatively easy to find. It doesn't take too much time. Or, there are probably like 100 other guys at this point. It's also at this point that I realized I completely forgot to mention enhancements. But pretty much that's what you unlock at level 15. In this game, enhancements replace the relic slot from Borderlands 2 and 3. Enhancements are super neat because they can do all sorts of things depending on the manufacturer. I don't remember what I have on right now, but later on I found some super cool ones. Now, Jacobs are my favorite because they always have to do with like ricochet. There's one where you have like a chance for the bullet to ricochet on non-critical hits. There's one that can make the bullets ricochet again. All sorts of super cool perks. It really depends on what guns you're mainly using, but yeah, that's like the relic replacement in this game. A little bit later, I saw this interesting thing on my map. This is one of the world events. I don't actually know how many of these there are. I think I did like 3 or 4, very likely 3 knowing everything else. But this one is the airship event. It's a pretty neat thing. Now, it was disappointing at first, but pretty much you get beamed up inside of the airship and you have to kill as many enemies and destroy as much stuff as possible before time runs out. Now, at the beginning, I really thought you only got 1 minute to get 350 points. Like, sure, you get a bunch of points relatively fast, but I'm like, there's no way I can do this in like 2 minutes. That's stupid. But this is all before I realized the timer's there for a reason. You actually get to raid multiple airships, and each airship has like different objectives that you have to do inside of it to get even more points. Also, yes, the airships force you out before the timer runs out. Like, it'll literally kill you if you stay in there. It does give you a countdown to jump out of the airship, but I kind of didn't do that the first time, just because I wanted to see what would happen. I mean, it should be self-explanatory. I died. But still, good to learn. I guess I should also mention that each tier of airship does get way more difficult, especially in like the side objectives you have to do. I honestly don't know like how and when these are activated or when they occur. I wish that was a bit more obvious. But now that I know how like each stage works, I could definitely do so much better. I only got gold for this one, which is a bit unfortunate. Now, it's going to be a long time before I get to another world event, but I did manage to get platinum on the other 2. Again, this is just because I didn't understand how this one worked. And I have to say, out of all the manufacturers, the Torgue parts in this game are absolutely wild. I mean, they're all adult references, like lubed kitty. Huh? So, yeah, that was an interesting find. There's some even more wild word combinations later on. So, yeah, that's also a thing. I eventually wandered into the top left of the map. I honestly don't remember what all the places are called. My brain is already filled with enough knowledge of this game. And at the start, I was only here because I had a mission to do, but obviously I decided, well, I'm here, might as well explore the place. There's all sorts of stuff to do here, and plenty of enemies to deal with. One cool thing you'll occasionally see is actually loot enemies. Yes, just like loot midgets from Borderlands 2, and, well, loot enemies in the other games, they're a bit tougher to kill, but drop really good loot. And one of the drops I got is easily one of my favorite combinations. Alright, get this. A Jacobs sniper rifle with the modern ricochet. Okay, that's awesome enough, but now add sticky bullets. Yeah, you can probably guess where this is going. Ricocheting sticky bullets. That cannot be balanced. And let me tell you, it is not. This is by far one of the best guns I've gotten in this run, just because of how much fun it is to use. While I was exploring, I managed to find another one of the world events. Now this one is pretty awesome. It's probably my second favorite. The airship is probably third place. I don't like it that much. And first place, you'll see later on. It's definitely the best. But this one is super interesting because you need to kill a ton of enemies, and I mean tons of enemies, pick up the crystals they drop, and then throw them into containers. The more crystals you collect, the higher your reward. Stuff like that. I think this is also some sort of reference. This one was talking about her railgun, like it's super important to her, but I don't actually know what the name of the anime I'm thinking of is. Maybe like a certain scientific railgun? I'm not 100% sure. Either way, this one is extremely simple. You literally just kill a bunch of enemies. Collecting the ore and then throwing them in can be a bit tricky, especially when there's a ton of ore, because it does despawn pretty fast, but overall, it's a super fun event and incredibly good XP. As you can see, I finally managed to find myself an order bunker. The only issue I have with the bunkers is that they're kind of like a puzzle to actually get into it. You need to find where the gas capsule is located. It took me a little bit, but once I started the recording, I finally found it. But I also say this is annoying because there is one bunker that's in the Dominion, you know, the city at the end. But unfortunately, the gas container is actually locked behind a mission, which the game does not tell you. I literally had to look that up to be disappointed, have to do a mission, and finally get to do the bunker. It's also kind of like a puzzle because you have to be fast with the gas bombs. They do have a small timer on them, so you gotta be quick once you pick it up. The bunkers are pretty neat, always filled with obviously order enemies. They can be a little confusing sometimes on how to get around, but the main reason I'm here is for the boss at the end. This boss is pretty interesting, Mimikron. I say interesting, but also extremely annoying because this is one of the bosses that spawns clones constantly. And the clones just distract from actually killing the boss. Also, he can go invisible to make it worse. Thankfully, he's relatively easy to see, but I believe action skills and stuff like that don't lock onto him. I'm not 100% sure because I'm only playing Rafa, but still. One important thing I want to note is that once you kill a boss in one of these bunkers or mines, you can actually farm them immediately after. For a lot of story mission bosses, you have to finish up, like that entire mission before you can finally farm the boss. The system for this is also pretty neat. There's always a red chest at the end, but I never get anything good out of them. And then there's actually a point you can grapple to. These are like little portals, and they will be explained in the missions way later on. But yeah, you teleport to the room right before the boss, and then you can use Moxie's Encore machine, which, respawns the boss for a small price. And even though it costs money, it's super cheap, especially compared to how much cash you get later on. So all you really have, it's a little bit expensive early on so that you don't farm bosses too much, but later on, you'll get just so much money that it won't even matter. And of course, you can always just pick up all of the stuff the boss drops, pick it up as junk and then easily sell it for money. It's an amazing system. Borderlands 4 has definitely done farming perfectly. While I'm on the topic of farming, there is one interesting thing to note here. The XP scaling in this game is very bizarre compared to the other games. Since there is no reset playthrough, obviously the enemies are going to scale throughout the entire game, but the game does require you to do a bunch of side missions and bounties to keep your XP at a decent level, because you can't just keep farming bosses infinitely. The XP they give goes way down if you farm one boss a lot. It's kind of stupid, but I also understand why they did it. This is another collectible I completely forgot existed. These weapon caches are all throughout the map, and you just have to go up to them, activate them, and boom, you get a bunch of neat loot. Naturally, it's all green and blue garbage, but occasionally I've gotten a couple of purples. No legendary though. At this point in my skill tree, I have a bunch of super powerful skills, and even more thanks to my class mod. The first row in the left tree gives me more indirect projectile damage. Indirect projectiles are things that aren't fired from my gun. The best example is obviously his action skill. The indirect projectile lifesteal is absolutely broken, by the way. And I like the other one. When you're moving, you actually have a chance to deflect the bullets back to the enemies. Finally, I get the most broken mechanic in Borderlands, bullet reflection. A little bit later, after collecting the other vault key fragments, I had to find the actual vault arch. And here it is. It's almost time to open up my first vault. This is all so exciting. I can't wait to see what's inside. I know there's going to be a boss at the end. As usual, the animation for the arch being created is super neat, and so is the inside. It's kind of odd compared to all the other games, as it looks more like an actual level. Since we all know how much Borderlands 4 loves the rule of 3, there are several different islands, a couple of which are just jump points between the islands, but 3 of which are areas that have a ton of enemies that you have to deal with before you can progress. And yeah, there's nothing much else to say for the combat here, it's just dealing with enemies. I've done quite a bit of that throughout 70 hours of gameplay. Alright, this is what I'm actually here for. The Vault Guardian / Vault Monster thingy. I think that's what they're called at this point. They're also known as Primordial Guardians. What's funny is that I've seen a tiny bit of gameplay, and I realize now, seeing this fight, this is one of the things I saw. Alright, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's a very unique arena, I'll give them that. But I was not prepared for how tough this boss would be. It hits like an absolute truck, so dodging is essential. This is definitely some sort of plant-based vault monster. I mean, just look at the arena. It also spawns creeps, which are technically plant enemies, if you listen to the lore of this game, at least. Anyways, this boss has quite a few neat mechanics. The first one you'll notice is it has a bunch of grapple points. What's neat is that you can actually rip parts of this vault monster off, which expose critical hit spots. That's pretty neat. A little bit later, he switches to a second phase, turns into like a giant cocoon. He also poisons the floor, which I didn't know at the time. There are grapple points to get up in the air, and then you can just use your glide pack. To defeat this phase super fast, there are a bunch of critical hit points at the top. That's easy because I have a super powerful Torg shotgun. Definitely one of my favorite weapons just because of how powerful this combo is. And it's all because of, the sticky bullets. All in all, even though the damage is a bit scary, thankfully I have a ton of healing from my rep kit and Rafa's skills, so it wasn't that difficult at all. I actually think it's a super neat fight how they did it. Sure, having to deal a whole phase worth of damage does get quite annoying, but all of the attacks and the grapple mechanic is super cool. Besides his loot, I actually get a reward from the vault at the end. The neat reward is actually an upgrade to my glide pack. It's a little bit lame because it could have been like anything else just crazy that this game could have gave us. But you know what? I can't really complain because it's incredibly handy, especially later on when you get the second and third upgrades. It makes the glide pack so much better. And it's powerful enough as is, so that's saying something. The best part about these vaults is that once you clear it for the first time, the mission actually completes itself, so you can just buy an encore and farm the boss again. That's pretty awesome. And naturally, that's what I decided to do, but as we all know, I got nothing good. At least you can open the chests at the end every single time you beat the boss, so I guess that's nice. I decided, since this is one of the few times I farmed the bosses, up to this point at least, I wanted to get a legendary. I got a legendary. You guys remember when I talked about the 3 stupid class mods earlier? Alright, this is when it's starting to happen. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that? I guess I did. You unlock your class mod at level 20. I guess that's helpful information before level 20, but I literally did the same exact thing with the enhancements, so oh well. There's so much to talk about in this game, my brain just isn't working properly anymore. A little bit later, I decided to do more of the main mission. This one's actually super neat because a bunch of NPCs help you clear the way. You're defending this massive truck full of locusts, but overall, nothing too crazy. I have to admit though, the story is super neat. You see, apparently this giant locust bomb cannot be activated remotely, and I think we all know what this means. Rush is going to sacrifice his life so that we can go kill Idolator Soul. But just when we thought he was dead, Zandra uses the fast travel system to teleport him to safety. Alright, that's pretty awesome writing right there. It's finally time to fight Idolator Soul. which totally reminds me of a Destiny boss, by the way. Like, his armor design really screams Destiny. But anyways, do you remember that boss from earlier where I had to hit him with the locust canister to actually deal damage? Guess what? That mechanic is back, and it's so much worse. Because this time, you can't even get the canister on your own terms. You have to wait until he does a specific attack. On top of that, you have to hit the container, which I absolutely failed the first couple of times. I mean, it's not the easiest thing trying to aim a container with a weird arc and a moving boss. Once you actually hit the container though, it destroys a good portion of his armor, and then you can actually damage him. Makes a lot of sense. He also seems to grow these like green critical spots where you can deal more damage. Kind of gross, but also interesting. Again, the whole invincibility unless you hit him with a specific attack, that's the worst part of this fight for sure. Especially because he has multiple phases, like other bosses. Every so often he'll go into this phase, where he turns most of the arena into a locust storm where you take a ton of damage. The part that sucks the most is that he actually regains his armor during these phases. So yes, it's literally an invincibility phase, you just have to wait it out. On top of that, every time he does one of these, his attacks change a bit, so you have to wait even further until you can get your next locust canister. Long story short, you want to kill him as fast as possible. It just gets more annoying the longer the fight goes on. It especially sucks if you want to farm him. I say this because he actually drops the class mod that I need the most. It's the one that buffs red skills. I was actually farming him a bit during the end game, but go figure, I still haven't gotten a level 50 class mod. Overall, again, a super neat fight. And here's what I was talking about earlier. 2 legendaries. That's awesome, right? Nope, it's 2 class mods I can't use. I was not happy with the game at this point, let me tell you that. It's pretty much the equivalent of the game giving me like a legendary skin, which thankfully, skins aren't in this game. You get customizations from challenges and missions. You don't get them from drops anymore. That's one of the best changes. No clue why they still did that in Borderlands 3, even though everyone hated it in 2. Most of the side missions in this game are relatively simple. It's usually just a lot of talking and then kill enemies and collect stuff. One of the missions I did earlier unlocked another set of missions after that. I would say this is one of the most difficult missions in the game, because this is like Simon Says. And the problem is that you have to have pretty precise controls to be able to do all of this. And this is the final difficulty of this thing, that's why it looks so complicated, because trust me, it is. You only get a couple of seconds to do each thing. It took me a while to figure out how the power core thing worked, because this is the only one that has the power core mechanic. I'm bringing this up because I feel like this mission could be very problematic for console players, or anyone who uses a controller and doesn't have enough experience and aiming ability like I do. Still, a super neat mission concept. A while later, I killed a world boss and managed to get another actual legendary for once. Bonnie and Clyde. It's a super cool assault rifle, and probably one of my favorite weapons. Basically, when you kill an enemy with one of the modes, either assault rifle or shotgun, it refills the magazine of the other and gives you 100% more damage for the other mode. It's pretty neat because you almost never have to reload. You kill an enemy, or a couple enemies, and then when the magazine is empty, you just swap to the other mode, kill some more enemies, and repeat. It's a super neat legendary. After that, I made my way to a bar. And as you can see, I think we all know who we're about to find. There's also no claptrap sign, which is pretty hilarious. In classic Borderlands fashion, this is finally Moxie's bar. Finding Moxie is cool enough, but guess what? The other person here is actually Zane. I was so happy to actually see that he's in the story, and he does play a pretty vital role. More important than that, he has tons of lines. And, I mean, we all love Zane. He is easily the best character in Borderlands 3, so I'm glad they brought him back. Also, Zane has a pet thresher called Sophia now. That's, quite interesting. I really do like how much this game expands on threshers. It's also neat because we get to use Sophia to destroy a bunch of Ripper machinery. giant catapults that are also throwing their drill machines. Some of their technology is crazy cool. Even though I wasn't looking at this 100% of the time, Callus finally shows up and unfortunately kills Sophia. I mean, even though she's a Thresher, still a super neat little character. After dealing with way more enemies, we meet Lavaine. She's one of the leaders of this fancy little society in this area. Honestly, I don't care too much, but there are a ton of side quests you can do here, so really good XP. Since Zane is now for vengeance, it's our mission to go and find him. That's easy enough because we've now found Callus's base. It's a giant old refinery with a jammer inside. To get inside though, we need 2 pieces of a password. One thing I will say is, when I first did this, I was a little bit concerned because of the first part. Now, it sounds bad when I say it like this, honk shoe. Yes, I know exactly what that sounds like, and that's why I was concerned. However, once you hear the whole thing, it makes a whole lot more sense.
Let me in. The password is
Honk shoe. Me.
It's like a cartoon character sleeping. Alright, that's a whole lot better. Great additional humor here. The guy that lets you in, he's so distracted that he doesn't realize you're a Vault Hunter. He literally keeps talking for a little bit until he finally attacks you. Besides the waves of enemies and occasional boss that I'm already used to, this section actually has something very interesting for a Borderlands game. Well, at least one of the normal ones, I guess. Because this part is very similar to like the Telltale games, I guess? I'm not 100% sure. But pretty much we have to do a bunch of things real quick, or I guess we'll get a different outcome for the mission. Honestly, I have no clue what happens if you don't save Quent, but obviously you should save him. You gotta grapple a bunch of stuff real quick and destroy a bunch of stuff. It's not super difficult, but looking back at it, I guess 1 minute is more than enough time to complete this. The next part of the mission is super awesome. We have to jump the massive gap to get to the next area where Callus is actually located. There's just one tiny problem. First, there are some rocks in our way. That's easy enough, we just have to use this boost pad to actually hit the rocks. Unfortunately, it destroys my car in the process, and I have to wait for it to respawn. After that, the game does give us the option to try and jump this ramp, or you can talk to Zane and go get a second booster. Spoiler alert, you have to get the second booster either way. I just wanted to jump anyways because I knew it would be hilarious. And yeah, there's not enough boost for it to actually work. So I have to say, that is pretty funny. I really do like that they give you the option to not die here for any players that are trying to do a one life. That's thoughtful. To get the thingy I need to activate the second boost pad, I have to go fight Carnivora 2.0. Hey, just because I don't like most of Borderlands 3 doesn't mean I won't mention it, because there's still some neat stuff. Even though the fight itself is horrible, I do like the entire concept of a giant moving vehicle. Also, I don't think the game entirely intends for you to fight this thing on with your vehicle. As a matter of fact, I think this is cheese. You see, with your Digi-Runner, you can actually get a little bit of height, or, a jump boost, which means you actually have just enough height to get up to this vehicle, which is super nice. So yeah, I'm gonna call that cheese, but I think it's perfectly fine because it makes this way easier, instead of having to get up to like a high spot and then jump onto this. Unfortunately, if you're not fast enough, you actually have to wait for this thing to go all the way around this loop again, which is painfully slow, because you have to jump off at a certain point to go fight a mini boss, get his key so that you can kind of steal the item you need from this. But overall, I really like this area. And this brings us to one of the most epic moments in the entire game. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. A massive jump over a ravine. I don't think it gets much better than that. Either way, from now, there's just a ridiculous amount of enemies to kill. I guess the only thing of interest to note for now is my ordnance. I'm using another Jacob's throwing knife. So I got one of these at level 17, but didn't realize how broke it was at the time. It's just a purple Jacob's ordnance. But because, this is Borderlands 4, it has a bunch of parts on it that make it just broken. One of the parts, when you hit an enemy, it makes them take like 15% more damage for a couple of seconds, which is insanely powerful on its own, especially against bosses. But get this. I also got and all damage will be critical hits to that enemy as well. You guys could probably see how this is a little bit powerful, especially when you're speed farming bosses later on. So I'm glad I got this. Because again, even though it's level 30, the damage it deals doesn't matter. You literally just want it for the debuffs. But that's just one example of what makes this game so great. Even lower rarity gear like blue or purple can be some of the most overpowered stuff in the game. I mean, just look at the gun I'm using. It's a dataless submachine gun, but it has a second mode where it fires all the bullets super fast. Even though the damage isn't crazy, the damage per second, thanks to this overcharged burst, is. You know, looking at the footage now, I actually don't know where the clip of the cutscene is. Well, it's not completely a cutscene, but it's like a live cutscene, if you know what I mean. It's a faraway animation that you see from the city with Lavaine in it. Pretty much, the Rippers launch a bunch of rockets into space. Yeah, they're trying to build a space elevator to get to the moon. And right now, our main goal is to disable it so that they cannot do that, obviously. Letting these guys get to the moon is probably a horrible idea, especially considering Callus wants the power that's up there. But I really hope you guys are thinking what I'm thinking with this area. Alright, I wasn't 100% sure how it would play out when I was at this point, but once I got even further in and saw what was going to happen, just you guys wait. There are several more reasons why Borderlands 4 might just be the best Borderlands. It gets just unbelievably cool. Another super neat change that I've forgotten a lot about until I actually see it is in this game, there are suicide psychos again. They're very scary, and they're even scarier in this game because their bomb actually beeps faster the closer they get to you. It's actually quite terrifying hearing that beeping just get louder and faster as they near you. So I really like that change as well. Thanks to the throwing knives I was talking about earlier, Callus's fight is actually stupidly easy. I mean, most enemies are with this build. I will admit that's one of my favorite parts so far. My build is just so powerful, I shred through everything. But I will say her fight is pretty neat. Even though invincibility phases are incredibly annoying, it makes sense when you have to clear out some enemies. It could be worse. What I think is actually the most interesting thing about this fight is how she creates that artificial terrain. And if you manage to touch it or get hit by any of her red laser beam attacks like that, you get slowed by a ton. It's incredibly painful. Honestly, there's nothing too interesting about this fight besides that, but still super neat boss and character all around. I finally decided to start farming bosses, and in this case, well, Callus. I got this shield, which just seems to be like a really good adaptive shield. Also, I hate this planet, might be a reference to General Knox. I'm not 100% sure. And then my first legendary rep kit, a triple bypass, obviously a reference to the triple bypass surgery. It's insanely powerful and has the chance to just replenish all the charges, which is a little bit stupid if you ask me. The final thing I got, which I'm glad I'm looking back at this now because this is the class mod I need, not the one that soul drops. This is the class mod that boosts red skills and doubles my overdrive bonuses again. You see how I have 1 point in the 1 out of 1 skill there? Yeah. Is that triple or quadruple overdrive bonuses? I don't know, but I want to see now, because that sounds stupidly overpowered. A little bit later, I found another Ripper drill site, and on the first try, I managed to get a legendary. I mean, there are 3 different mini bosses in this one, so the legendary chance is pretty crazy here, and it's super easy to farm. Either way, this gun, called the Wombo Combo, is insanely powerful. Like, actually. It's a standard Vladoff assault rifle, but instead of giving you an underbarrel you can actually swap to, it automatically fires rockets every few shots. Combine this with one of the enhancements that has a chance to shoot an additional projectile with Vladoff weapons. Yeah, it's a little bit powerful to say the least. But the next legendary I got is one of my favorites, but not because it's good. This thing, the spinning blade, is actually quite garbage if you ask me. And I didn't quite realize what it was until I used it. So if you realized what the red text said way before I did, it says, "I'll take that." Now, honestly, that's not the best red text, but it's literally a reference to Draven in League of Legends. That's one of his quotes. Honestly, not the most iconic. I'm thinking like, God axes need victims or something else would have been more interesting, but it's a pretty neat legendary. If you know how Draven works, one of his abilities throws a spinning axe, which once it hits an enemy ricochets back towards you. If you catch it, the cooldown of the ability resets. Alright, it's not exactly like that, but I don't feel like explaining it entirely. That's how the grenade works at least. When you hit an enemy, the knife comes back, and if you catch it, the cooldown is reset. Easily one of my favorite references in this game. I just wish it were a bit more powerful. I seriously wish I recorded more of the dialogue from this guy, Skeptical Sam, one of my favorite characters. As you can see the mission, it's called Flat Kairoser. Yes, obviously a reference to flat earthers. And some of his lines are just the funniest things ever, because obviously it's all the crazy conspiracy theories. You know, flat earth, the moon landing being fake, nanobots in the water, all of that good stuff. He also noted one, which is probably my favorite of all, by the way, and it's birds aren't real. I mean, there's a good bit of truth to that one, honestly. And Rafa responds by saying, wait, did you say birds? Yeah, just one of the best side missions in the game. I kind of forgot to mention that I'm in the top right region of the map at this point. I'm kind of heading this way because that's where all the next main missions are. Or at least I have to complete the faction missions and stuff like that first. Anyways, this is where I found the third world event. I think there's only 3 because I have not seen any more. I'm guessing most of you guys can tell what this is. Yes, it's a Circle of Slaughter. One thing this game severely lacks. Like, it's literally just this one. I don't know why we don't have like an Order Slaughter and a Bandit Slaughter. Well, I guess there are bandits in here later on, but still, I would have liked more of these. Needless to say though, this was extremely easy. There are some side challenges, but those are mostly to give you extra time, which I was not lacking at all. My time only looks bad now because I was trying to figure out how to get the barrel kills, which you can probably see I am horrible at. I guess one thing I can say about this being the only Circle of Slaughter, I mean, there are so many enemies that spawn everywhere in this game that there's plenty to kill no matter where you go. So I guess it's not too bad. I just wanted like more of a horde mode. Ooh, I wonder if they'll do that for a DLC. That would be just awesome. An insane horde mode. It would probably crash a lot of PCs though. The funny thing is that the drops from all of these events are absolute garbage. I only get like green, blue, and purple guns. I actually got this enhancement, which is, by the way, my one and only legendary enhancement within 70 hours of playtime. Think about that for a little bit. My one and only, and it's garbage TDR. But yeah, I've never gotten anything really good from these world events. They are great for XP though. Next up in the story, we meet one of the other important side characters named Defiant Calder. Now, at first, I really didn't think I would like this character. He reminded me a lot of Typhon de Leon from Borderlands 3, and I really don't like that character. I'm quite sick of him. But let me say, Defiant Calder is actually a really good and funny character. I really like him. He's incredibly well written, a very tricky character, and pretty smart. He's also been exiled by his main clan, and his entire goal is, well, fighting to get back into the clan and save his people. So again, very good writing. I think it's also at some point, maybe near the beginning of this mission, where you actually get to unlock the mines. You guys remember the one I saw all the way at the beginning of the game? It's actually super close to the start now that I think about it. But yeah, it's at this point I finally unlock those, which is super neat. There's also another flying boss. What makes this flying boss particularly bad is the fact it's a Cratch, one of those super annoying flying enemies. Thankfully, my build is so powerful, I just melt him. But you guys don't know pain until you have to deal with like one of the vile Cratch later on, which I'll get to those enemies soon enough. They are nightmare fuel. I also found the little area to complete the Flat Kairoser mission, and yeah, the ending is pretty funny. He meets his end to gravity, which, as we all know, does not exist. Definitely one of the best missions in this game. After quite a lot of dialogue I didn't care too much about, we were supposed to go find the Wildcat. Now, at first, even I thought it was this thing here, but no, this is not what we're looking for. We happened to find, instead, Amara. I mean, you can probably tell by the phase bubble right there. So this is super neat. We get to see Amara again. I very much like that. But what's even cooler is the fact she kind of watches over the wreck of the Sanctuary 3. Alright, that's pretty neat, and explains a whole lot in this game's story. Now, I'm guessing a lot of the characters went their separate ways at the end of Borderlands 3. I guess that explains why we don't see Tannis, Marcus. I mean, Hammerlock and Wainwright, yeah, they probably moved somewhere else, so it makes sense. But I'm not complaining, because at the same time, you shouldn't bring back every single character every game. I think it would be neat to either save them for later games, or just not bring them back. Although, you know, I am curious where they went. I wish that would have been explained somewhere. I guess I haven't picked up every single echo, so maybe those explain it? Who knows? There hasn't really been too much besides combat up until this point. Some of these creeps can be incredibly annoying because some of them can burrow, just like coconut crabs in Wonderlands, literally my least favorite enemy ever. But this Tim enemy is pretty funny because, you know, it's a talking creep. It's got a voice. This is one of Vile Lictor's experiments, which obviously he's experimented with all sorts of things, creatures, people, iridium, phase powers, and stuff like that. So definitely a very interesting boss we're gonna fight soon enough. You know, I have to talk about how the vial mechanic works, but I completely forgot it's around this point where I got literally my favorite legendary in the game. It's called the Vomit. It's a Jacobs shotgun that fires radiation, cryo, and shock bullets at the same time. It does an insane amount of damage, plus Jacob's Ricochet. This one also has the TDR licensed part, so I throw it when I reload, which isn't crazy, but pretty neat. This is a legendary to look out for sure with how powerful it is. This entire time, our mission has been to try and free Lilith from the phase dimension. This is all about what happened after Borderlands 3. Again, that's why the moon is here on Kairos instead, all that good stuff. And so we free Lilith, but then that happens. Yeah, she kind of just disappears. Pretty interesting, I guess. So the entire story for this area is that Vile Lictor is trying to use Iridium to get access to the phase dimension, and you know, this stuff is all connected to sirens and everything like that, but he wants to get into the phase dimension so he can access godlike powers that the sirens can. And here's probably like the biggest plot hole in the entire story. Look at this. If Vile Lictor can literally just create portals and do anything he wants anywhere, for example, kill Ardenoff just like this, I mean, what's stopping him from creating portals and just killing our characters instantly? It genuinely makes no sense. He has this overpowered ability, but barely uses it? I mean, I guess you can't have a villain be too smart in anything, else they would actually win for once. So there's some food for thought. Another cool legendary, that's one of my favorites as well, that I got is called the Convergence. I think this is from Borderlands 3. Well, actually, I know it is, but I don't know if it's been in the series before that. Either way, it's a super cool and powerful shotgun. When the bullets hit an enemy, it creates a bunch more bullets that, well, converge on that enemy. It does a ton of damage, and it's very nice. But overall, I don't think it's ever been that powerful compared to most other weapons. But I originally loved it in Borderlands 3 because it's a powerful Hyperion shotgun. I mean, you can't go wrong with those. In here, it's Daedalus, which makes a lot of sense. Daedalus weapons feel a lot like Hyperion, at least for like the shotguns. Okay, well, yeah, the shotguns are the only thing that feel like that because all their other guns are burst. And burst fire is more like Dahl, but you get what I'm trying to say. It just feels fun to use. At this point, we also get an awesome new ally called Bruce. Alright, that's pretty funny. I know a lot of Borderlands players also watch Borderlands videos, which means you probably have seen Lil Gas Mask. Yeah, his name is Bruce. That's why I think this part is so funny. I literally can't stop thinking about him whenever I hear the name Bruce. But in here, Bruce is going to help us break through some of these phase barriers to continue on with the level. He's also very powerful, and there's all sorts of Bruce-related puns as well. The Bruce is on the loose. Oh yeah, I love this section. That's another reason I like Defiant Collider so much. He is super funny. It's a bit unfortunate I don't have any good examples here, but there's a major mechanic that I wanted to mention now. At some point when you're doing this specific mission line, these things called vile enemies will start appearing around the map. That's kind of the major part of this story and area. I mean, you saw the boss a bit earlier on, but that doesn't really do it justice. Pretty much, vile enemies will have these giant crystal shards growing out of them, and they'll have like a purple, goldish looking health bar. You have to shoot all of the crystals off of them before you can actually deal damage to them. This is why I would say they're like one step above badass enemies in terms of difficulty. When you shoot off a crystal, it'll actually start flying around, becoming an entity called Vile Ordinite, and you have two options. You can either just kill the enemy if you're fast enough, or kill the Vile Ordinite, because after a little bit, the Vile Ordinite will fly back to the enemy and then regrow that crystal section. There are 4 crystals, so 4 Vile Ordinites. That's definitely not the best way to explain it, but I hope I kind of got the point across. Because from now on, these vile enemies are going to be all around the map in all different places, and of course, they can be like any enemy. Trust me, you don't know pain until you've had to deal with a vile crash. Those things are horrible. Once you unlock vile enemies, safe houses will sometimes have vile bounties, which is, just a unique vile enemy. It'll give you way more XP though, so they're really good to go hunt. Final thing to note here, I know there's a lot going on, but the legendary sniper I have is another favorite of mine. I think it's like Katagawa's Revenge or something like that. Obviously a reference to Borderlands 3. It talks a bit, which is funny, and it uses Katagawa's voice, but I love it because the legendary effect is literally called Storm Cloud. Yes, it's the storm from Borderlands 2. It's not that great. I mean, it's probably a bit better than Borderlands 2's Storm. Some people know how garbage that gun is, especially for being a pearlescent, but it's still super fun to use it in lower levels like this. I say lower levels, and yet I'm level 40. Back to story time. We've destroyed one of Vile Lictor's phase generators, and it's going to explode. Thankfully, we have Bruce here to save us. The only unfortunate thing is that it's a sacrifice for Bruce. He won't make it through. Another temporary character, but still great because of Calder. What's neat is that Bruce is still useful, even in death. We pick up a core from him, I guess it's the Ordinite core or something like that, and I can just throw that into a console, because now the game is introducing us to a new mechanic just for this section, thankfully, but it's very similar to the Locust bombs from earlier. But instead of Locust, they're called Bruce bombs, which again is still very funny. These Bruce bombs can be used to break down these purple phase barriers lying all throughout this facility. So yeah, just throw another thing to break things type of mechanic. Not too crazy, because we've already seen this several times throughout the run, throughout the story, but still very cool mechanic. I really like that they added it to this game. The only tiny problem is that it's kind of like a puzzle in some sections, because it's not very obvious where the spawners for these bombs actually are. I mean, granted, it partially was my fault. I wasn't exploring quite enough to find the other spawner, but it's nothing too difficult. You know what I was saying about Vile Lictor's blades earlier? I mean, look at this. Out of all the actions he can take with his abilities right now, all he does is chop off Amara's arm? I mean, sure, that's horrible, but at the same time, he literally could have just stabbed her in the back. Don't you think that would have been the right play for a villain? I mean, I guess not. Amara is a siren, so she's going to be important to the story, but still. This game has had incredible writing, except for, this major plot hole. But I was immediately distracted by that because guess what? There's a freaking jump pad from the pre-sequel. Yes, I'm not kidding. It literally uses the same sound effects and everything. That's pretty awesome. Naturally, this jump pad throws me into Vile Lictor's arena. It should be pretty obvious at this point, my build is just so overpowered that nothing is really a challenge. I mean, it's a neat enough fight, but his crit spots are so easy to hit that it's super simple. The second part of his fight is actually within the phase dimension. It's still easy, especially thanks to double jump and gliding. But he does have one neat attack where he creates a massive explosion in the middle and you have to grapple out before that happens. This attack is really just more annoying than anything else because it's almost like an invincibility phase because you can't attack him during it. So if you're not fast enough, he will do this several times. But yeah, nothing too difficult. But here's one of the most interesting parts about the story. That wasn't Lilith that phased into us. You guys remember RJ all the way from the beginning of the story? Apparently, he was experimented on by Vile Lictor, so his mind is now completely broken, and he has powers like a siren. I guess that explains a lot of this. Now, you might think that RJ is an ally to us because he was at the beginning of the game. Well, no. He's not exactly a villain. I mean, he kind of is, but I would actually rank him more as an anti-hero now, because he's working against us. You see, Amara's current goal is to find Lilith, but he says if we find Lilith, everything is going to go bad. So from now on, he's going to try and stop us from finding Lilith. I mean, that's a super interesting twist to the story. Instead of continuing the story, my next goal was to go clear the other 2 vaults. It took me quite a while to find both of them. It took me a little bit to find this one, but it was pretty obvious once I got close. And the location of the vaults is like one of those things that once you've seen them once, you'll never forget. And I mean, the inside of all 3 is pretty much the same. 3 massive waves of enemies, and then the boss. So let's get right to it. You're probably wondering why I started the clip in the middle of the fight. Well, guess this. 35 hours in and I've experienced my first crash. Of course, it was when I was fighting a boss. You know, doing something important. The vault monster isn't anything too crazy, but I have to admit, the fight is super unique. He clearly seems to be some sort of like storm element thingy. First of all, he spawns a ton of rocks, which is probably the most annoying part of the fight, honestly, mostly because they have bullet deflection and they block all of your attacks, and I'm not a fan of that. But his other main attack, when he spawns all of these lightning clouds and strikes the ground, that's super cool. Now, I didn't know how to deal with it at first, but if you literally either look at the ground or look up, they're super easy to dodge. Overall, the fight isn't anything crazy, probably because my build is so powerful. But on that note, all of the little pangolins that he spawns actually keep damaging me, which means I lose all of my damage buff from my shield, or, you know, my shield skills. So that kind of counters me there. Yeah, nothing else to say, really. Out of all 9 vault pieces, I have to say this is the worst one by far. You see, it's all the way up on this cliff, and I believe the only way to access it is to use the giant lift that the silo gives you. You know, it brings you up into the air and then launches you in a certain direction. Like, there is literally no other way to get up here. Trust me, I've spent several hours at this point trying to figure this out. And yes, I was too stubborn to look it up. On top of that, I think the only reason I got up here is thanks to Rafa's speed boost from my overdrive skills. I'm convinced at this point that's how I did it. Again, I'm not 100% sure what the intended way is, but it's stupid. I guess this is also a good time to mention one major thing. Before the game was released, everyone was super concerned about the fact that we had no minimap. Once I started playing though, I completely forgot that was even a thing. I'm just so used to the compass at the top. But once I got further and further into the game, I noticed the major reason why we need an actual minimap now, so I can figure out where I'm going. I literally can't figure out what direction to go half the time. Now, of course, there is a button you can actually press to bring up your Echo 4, but I hate having to do that every few seconds to see where I need to go. Like, it's literally not about the enemies on the minimap anymore. That's not a problem in this game. It's legitimately just navigating, that is. But I guess once I play this game enough, I'll know where everything is and it won't be as big of a problem. But that is one major complaint I have about this game so far. This boss is also super interesting. I love the theming of this place. It's like a giant ice dragon that also has fire attacks later on. It's a little bit bizarre, but super unique. Speaking of unique, the grenade I'm using. I got this awesome combination. One of them is like pulsing and something like that. I forgot what the effects are called, but they're both area of effect things. And as you can see, it's shock, so it is literally melting the boss. I haven't seen any area of effect grenades besides artillery, which is bouncing betties, up until this point. And yeah, they're quite powerful to say the least. So here's the main reason you want to get all 3 vaults as soon as possible. I know it was only shown on the screen for a second there, but 50% cost reduction to the glide pack. The upgrades are recharge rate, recharge delay, and then cost reduction. That makes the glide pack so much more powerful than it already is. On top of that, this boss has one of my favorite drops, the Cowson. This is another gun from Borderlands 3, and because of the licensed part system, it always comes with Torgue sticky bullets. You can probably tell that it's a little bit powerful. Yeah, I love this gun. I mean, I think there are a few combinations better than Vladov SMG and Torgue sticky bullets. But I assure you, because of how the parts work in this game, cooler combinations do exist. Just wait until later. A little bit later, I happened to stumble upon this mission, which now is easily my favorite mission in the game. It starts out very interestingly, to say the least. A whole bunch of TDR guns have gained sentience and gone rogue. That's very interesting, to say the least. I found it interesting that TDR weapons started talking after Borderlands 3, but I had no clue they were sentient. The best part of this whole mission is the fact it's an entire Pokemon reference. Even the guy that gives you the mission has a chance to say, "I choose you to save us." For this part, I have to capture a bunch of the TDR guns that are running around. This is harder than you might think. First of all, some of them shoot at you, which is quite annoying, but actually hitting enemies with thrown objects is kind of difficult. And I expect it to be way worse for console players. Like, my aim is only this good because I have several years of experience in first-person shooters and all other sorts of games. I can't imagine doing this on a controller. Well, I probably could, it'd just be way more difficult. After that, I have to just chew my way through a massive town full of TDR guns. This is pretty fun. And I also have to get to the top, which is called the Gym, but it's spelled with G-I-M. You know, another good Pokemon reference there. But the end is the real best part of the mission. It's when the, main boss of the sentient guns fights you. Obviously, it's a super easy fight, but it's more about the philosophical questions that the game is talking about at the end. You know, how it's, not morally correct to actually capture and, fight Pokemon. There's all sorts of good lines in here. I just love this mission a bit too much. This is also one of the times I've seen the bosses get glitched or stuck. Thankfully, a simple punch fixed it, but yeah, there's definitely some issues with bosses either getting out of bounds by accident or enemies getting glitched like this.
I would, but this is the weirdest guild trip I've ever gotten. Hey, sounds like somebody's not having an existential crisis. Another insurmountable problem surmounted.
When I was farming one of the drill sites a bit later on, I found this thing. Okay, now that I look at it, I realize what my brain did. Okay, the prefix is called Chosen. The weapon is called the Disc Jockey. You know, like the DJ profession. Okay, but in my mind, I converted it to Chicken Disc Jockey. You know, chicken jockey meme. Alright, so I'm just gonna say that right there. I guess if I ever see the word jockey, I always turn it into chicken jockey because of the meme now. So yeah, I found that a little funny. It's actually a disc launcher, and it's quite powerful, I will admit. But still, nothing is nearly as fun as some of the crazy grenade combinations you can get in here. Skipping a whole bunch of story because there wasn't anything too interesting. Long story short, we need to go to the moon. You guys remember that space elevator I was talking about earlier? Well, I was really hoping we get to use it to actually go to Elpis, and guess what? We totally get to. Alright, this is the coolest thing ever. I can't wait to go back to Elpis. Of course, there are several objectives I have to do before that, killing a whole bunch of enemies, but nothing too difficult. The whole reason we need to go to the moon is, still to get Lilith, but also because now we have all 3 command bolts, and we want to go to the Dominion City. The problem is, it's completely locked, so we need to get a way in. Our best bet is probably Lilith. Every single thing about the next few parts is just amazing. I absolutely love it all. First, we have the space elevator actually going into space, and we have to fight our way through waves of enemies. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? It's so cool getting to see us, actually ascending up in the sky. Next up, there's a very cool high-stakes cutscene with RJ in it, and Zane manages to kick him off the edge in the end. Hopefully, that's the last we'll see of him. And now we're in low Kairos orbit. You guys know the problem with that? There's no air up here. Thankfully, it does give you a rebreather. It's called a rebreather. That's actually very disappointing to me, Gearbox. Seriously, we all know they're called Oz kits, But I guess we didn't get an Oz kit, we did get more of just an oxygen mask instead. That's still heavily disappointing, because there's already oxygen sources in the lore. But never mind that, it's instantly redeemed by the fact we have threshers in space. Both on the ground, but here's the crazy part, they can fly. That's partially terrifying, I'll be completely honest. Threshers are bad enough when they're confined to the ground, but man, the flying ones are like alive missiles. It's pretty awesome actually. Also, if you look at the objective, it does say oxygen kit, so even though they called it a rebreather, it's also oxygen kit. But seriously, we're not going to use Oz kit from the pre-sequel? The next awesome thing, the little jet that I was right next to is actually a Raumkampf jet. That's a reference to one of the bosses in the pre-sequel. It's the flying boss that literally everyone hates. Also, fun fact, RK5 is glitched and can't drop any legendaries. That's another reason to hate it. Other fun fact, Raumkampfjet literally means like space fighter jet in German. It's something like that. It might be jet fighter. I don't entirely remember. I guess you can just put a lot of words into other languages and it becomes cooler to English gamers. One other detail that kind of disappoints me is the fact that enemies can just breathe up here. You see, in Borderlands the pre-sequel, a lot of the human enemies had oxygen masks that you could actually break, and they would start to suffocate and take lots of damage from. I think that could have been a super cool mechanic to implement just for this level. It would be a really good reference to pre-sequel, and fit the lore of the game very well. There's also a part where we have to restore power by cranking up the generators, which is another super neat use of the grappling hook. Again, one of the best mechanics they have ever added, and very neat how they use it in all of the missions. Other interesting thing to note, Callus is back. I mean, we killed her, but not like killed her. She was still actually alive the entire time. So that's gonna be interesting. It also means we're gonna have to fight her again. Also, I feel like her jumping onto the window is a reference to a movie of some sort. I wouldn't actually know which one though, but I feel like I've seen it, somewhere before. She then proceeds to jump on Zane and Amara's fighter jet, and it goes down somewhere. We're gonna have to go find them. There also were more jump pads in this level, which was super cool. But now, Amara's punched us a portal into the phase dimension. We're actually going to go in there and get Lilith back, which I'm guessing a lot of people probably regret. Either way, the phase dimension is neat enough and very trippy. Unfortunately, all it is just a bunch of walking and waiting. And I don't know about you guys, but this gives me flashbacks to walking through Kellogg's mind in Fallout 4. Nobody likes missions like this, by the way. At least it wasn't like way too long. And finally, we have Lilith back. The thing that's most interesting to me is how they changed her design. It looks like way different from even Borderlands 3. Honestly, I didn't like her design in there either, so way worse in here. But we have bigger problems on our hand currently, and that is Callus. I mean, we were gonna have to fight her at some point. I have to admit though, fighting her on a giant chunk of Elpis that's falling back to Kairos is pretty sick. Her attacks are definitely way different than her first fight, but again, nothing too difficult because of my build. Her second phase is far more interesting though, because she creates like a barrier between you and her. Unfortunately, this is also an invincibility phase, and the slow you get from her web is absolutely horrible. That's why I'm glad I dodged it so much during her first fight. You can barely move at all. And for a game where movement is so important, yeah, it really sucks. Naturally, the asteroid impact left a massive dent in this city. A good portion of one area, at least, is completely ruined. As you can probably guess, the city is just overflowing with Order enemies, so there's plenty to kill. One interesting thing about this area is that you can't actually use your vehicle in the city. Now, it is explained a little bit in the story, and it makes sense if the city's on lockdown, but later on, after you kill the timekeeper, you still can't use your vehicle. It makes zero sense, actually. It's super annoying because, like I said, it's a massive area to traverse. So you're going to spend a lot of time just like jumping and hovering around. Of course, the current goal is to make our way to the Timekeeper's vault, I guess. I was going to say base, but no, we're in his base already. But he has a giant laser beam that's going to evaporate us if we get too close. Naturally. Anyways, I just need to find a thing so I can deactivate it. In this area, there's also a safe house, which is very nice, and I finally decide to actually spend one of my golden keys. I got this gun, which is easily one of my favorites. It's called Rowan's Charge. So it's a lot like Rowan's Call, or Lucian's Call in Borderlands 3. It's an automatic Jacob's assault rifle, and it's interesting because it's way different than Borderlands 3 in its legendary effect. It has a 20% to just crit by default, which is very nice. And when you hit a critical, it ricochets, but it only has a chance to refill ammo, which makes sense because refilling ammo on every single hit is extremely overpowered, especially with sticky bullets. And I will say, with one of the builds I currently have on Harlow, I can actually stick like dozens or hundreds of sticky bullets to enemies if I want. You can make them detonate all at the same time, and considering you deal more damage for each sticky bullet, you can detonate bosses pretty easily. It's actually crazy. I've always loved the Rowan's Call in Borderlands 3, so obviously I'm gonna love not a copy of it, but something very similar. The thing we used to destroy the laser beam actually happened to knock out our Echo 4. I hope you guys know what this means. Even though Zandra teleports us to safety, guess what? Our character's bolt is no longer being jammed, which means the Timekeeper can control us. And everyone realizes that only when it's too late. It's kind of a shame that Zandra dies because I actually really liked her character. I really thought she was going to be like a replacement for Tannis, but I guess not. But long story short, she leaves us a massive dump of information, and that lets us clear out more of the level. And we eventually reach the Timekeeper's Tower. This part also gives me complete Far Cry vibes because you get trapped in this thing, and I'm super curious to see what happens if you actually just die inside of this literal cell. But if you break your way out, obviously you continue normally. I seriously doubt anything else would happen. Maybe he has a line or something like that. I mean, it would be neat at least. One thing I actually did not expect is for RJ to return. I mean, I guess I should have. I had a slight feeling, but I really thought since we were so high up in the atmosphere, he would just die for some reason. I guess not. Another super neat thing about this map in particular is that the tower has this massive laser beam that it tries to hit you with. Alright, that's pretty neat, especially how it changes the map, at least by, breaking that glass pane and letting you drop down. This laser will be a continuous threat for the rest of this level, which is pretty interesting. I don't think we've really seen a mechanic like this in a Borderlands game before. And at long last, I can finally use those 3 command bolts to actually go fight the Timekeeper. This is very exciting. Now, I was planning to show more of the Timekeeper fight, but I'll be perfectly honest, it's nothing too crazy. I mean, sure, he has some super neat attacks and everything like that, but a lot of bosses just feel like bullet sponges in the end, and it doesn't really help that my gear is pretty bad for the most part. It's literally just my skill build that's carrying me at this point. My action skill does a decent amount of damage on its own, but it's literally all of the indirect projectile healing and everything like that that's keeping me alive. Naturally, there's also a second part to this fight where the Timekeeper becomes a vault monster, another primordial guardian, which is pretty awesome. I love the design of this thing. And the mechanics for a second part are far cooler because you get all these pyramid-shaped things you can actually grapple to. You can stand on them, or if you're like me, you kind of just grapple around the place like it's Just Cause, which I think is so much more fun. But yeah, if I had better gear, I would have melted him so much faster than even this. I can't remember if each part has its own loot pool, but I know his drops are the Star Helix and Ion Coil, or Plasma Coil, whatever, which I would love to try. The Star Helix is absolute garbage, by the way. I've tried it. It sucks. The ending cutscene is super neat by destroying one of his triangles that he loves, but then RJ teleports us into the phase dimension to go and fight him. RJ's fight is way easier than the Timekeeper, but this is mostly because I had a super powerful grenade. It's one of the bouncing grenades that gets more powerful with each bounce, and since RJ is a grounded enemy, he can't fly or anything like that, yeah, this was pretty easy. Nothing too crazy. Except for the fact he has some sort of ability that can actually slow or stun you. I'm not 100% sure how you dodge that. I don't know if you can actually farm him, I assume you can, like every other boss in this game, but I have no clue what he drops. Even though we're at the end of the game, there's actually still new mechanics I have to go over. Once you finish up the story, you get specializations. Very much like Borderlands 3 and its Guardian rank, specialization is a point system you get at the end of the game. Apparently, you don't unlock it after level 50. It is once you complete the story. That's why I recommend just trying to complete the story as fast as possible, so that all the XP you get also counts towards these, since you can level up normal XP and specialization at the same time. In here, there are 7 trees to choose from, and every 5 points will get you one of the skills. You have to have 10 points in 2 of the trees to get the one in the middle. Obviously, all the skills at the bottom are incredibly powerful, and of course, it's up to you for what you use. Specializations are also character specific in this game, which is very nice. And of course, since we're right at the end of the game and in the final vault, it's time to get some epic loot. By epic, I mean literal crap. I don't know why we didn't get guaranteed legendaries in here, like Borderlands 3, that would have been awesome. I literally only got green and blue loot. Like, seriously. You know, I've said this in a couple other games actually, but at this point, if you're gonna give me such garbage loot, just give me nothing at all so I don't get disappointed. Like, seriously, I literally got nothing. Not even a single purple, which is crazy to me. Just like Borderlands 3, the end of this story actually makes 0 sense at all. Either way, it looks like Lilith is the only thing left at the end of the universe. Or at least the Firehawk, I guess. She was the beginning and she was the end. Okay, I have no clue what that's supposed to mean either, but oh well. It also feels quite like the end of Borderlands the pre-sequel, where the Watcher says war is coming. I mean, she's pretty much saying the same thing. You cannot stop what's coming, I guess. I don't know. We'll probably figure that out in another DLC or the next game. Who knows? I'm still not done explaining new mechanics either. There are a few more things. This is called the transfer machine. You see, every so often, you'll find gear that has a 1 or, something out of 3 at the bottom. These are called firmware. Now, there are all sorts of different firmware perks that are pretty neat, even though most of the sets actually suck. There are some ones like Lifeblood, Deadeye, High Caliber. I can't remember all the names, but those are really good. It's funny because one of the other games I play has a system just like this. But pretty much these firmware perks can appear on everything except for guns. So no guns. And for each piece of gear you have equipped with that specific firmware set, you get another level of that perk. So, from 1 to 3 in whatever it is you get for whatever set it is. And each set obviously does different stuff. I don't know what any of them do off the top of my head, but just trust me here. The transfer machine allows you to take firmware from one piece of gear and transfer it to another piece of gear of the same type. So, class mod to class mod, shield to shield, stuff like that. I think you can only do it once. I don't think you can transfer the gear again from the same item because it does break whatever item you put as the input. So it deletes the input, and I think the output gear you can still use, obviously, that's how it's intended, but I don't think you can use that as input again. I'm not 100% sure since I haven't tried it myself. Another mechanic that very much gives me Destiny vibes is Maurice's vending machine, or black market, whatever it's called. I think this is one of the weekly things where it has a bunch of legendaries. For now, it only looks to be 2 different legendaries, but each one has 4 different roles. I went with the 7th sense since I was using this earlier, and it's actually very powerful. I like it a lot. And I'm willing to bet this is what a lot of money is going to be used for, because the first one is only 1 cash, so pretty much free, but I haven't been able to access the next one, so I don't know how expensive those are. I honestly can't remember what exactly is different about the big encore, but this is another one of the weekly things where it, changes. And instead of the normal encore, you can spend a bunch of iridium to get a big encore. So I guess the boss is more difficult and gives better loot or something like that. I couldn't really notice any better loot. My luck is still horrible. The final weekly thing is like a mission that's more difficult than usual. I believe it repeats one of the story missions and just gives the enemies a bunch of modifiers. I have to say, this mission in particular is extremely lame because like half of it is literally just walking around doing stuff. It's not even killing enemies yet. Why did they choose this one out of every other in the game? Okay, looking at it now, it could either be that weekly mission, or, here's something else very confusing, Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. You see, one slight problem with this game is that there's no playthrough reset, just like Wonderlands, and this system is a whole lot like Chaos levels in Borderlands 3. This system is way more like Mayhem levels in Borderlands 3, and Chaos from Wonderlands. Pretty much, you have to do this mission and a bunch of other missions later on to actually increase your Ultimate Vault Hunter level. That is the new, OP level system. But, same problem. This is extremely lame. The only neat thing I can say is that almost all enemies share modifiers, and in this case, it's centrifugal. I'm definitely going to butcher that no matter how hard I try, but it creates a singularity wherever you killed the enemy. So it is pretty neat. And as you can see in the next clip here, I have that 1 at the bottom of my screen in a new little icon. That's how you can tell my level. So instead of the whole mission and the rest of this system, I really think the Ultimate Vault Hunter levels should have been a gauntlet, just like Borderlands 2. That was literally the perfect system. Except for the scaling after that, because in Borderlands 2, it increases the enemy's level by 1 for each OP level, which makes the game far more difficult at the end, compared to all the new modifiers that they do instead. Either I didn't read it at the beginning, or I'm just dumb, probably a combination of both, but to figure out what you have to do to increase your Ultimate Vault Hunter level, you go to Challenges in one of your menus, and you look at the Ultimate Vault Hunter tab. Well, that makes a lot more sense now, and it will tell you what objectives you actually need to do to go to the next level. Here's how the system works. You go to Lilith and do one of those missions. It's one of the random story missions that it chooses you to do. After that, you have to go to 3 different areas and kill the boss there. These can be the mines, bunkers, or even side missions, which is very stupid, I have to admit, especially considering this is the mission you get after doing another mission that I really hate, because you need to do that one to actually unlock a bunker in the city here. So yeah, horrible system all around. I mean, it is just that easy. You go and find those 3 side bosses to kill, you do the next mission, and yeah, that's it. It took me quite a while, but I got to Ultimate Vault Hunter level 5. Yeah, that's the highest it goes right now. I mean, the modifiers are pretty crazy, but still, my build is just so broken that it doesn't really matter. And even though I don't show it here, it took me a while to figure out, but apparently you can change your difficulty and Ultimate Vault Hunter level in the session settings in your escape menu. That makes a whole lot more sense, and it wasn't very obvious to me. Overall, as you guys have seen so far, I absolutely love Borderlands 4. I'm just a little burnt out of it right now because I literally put 70 hours in it to make this video. So yeah, even though I did start playing a new character a few days later, still, I'm a little burnt out. Overall, it is one of the best games ever, as long as you can play it. Yes, Borderlands 4 has plenty of issues that we all know of. Obviously, the big one that everybody talks about is performance. I absolutely agree. The performance is horrible, even on very high-end PCs. I definitely agree that it should not be this bad, but this is like a new way that they're making the game, all open world like this. So I guess it makes some sense, but yeah, it really shouldn't be this bad for such an expensive game. Besides that though, I don't really have many issues with it. The only other problems I have with Borderlands 4 so far is, 1, the lack of endgame content. So cool, I've beaten all the story, I've beaten all the bosses. Sure, you can do 100% collectibles, which I might have to at some point, that does sound fun, but there's really nothing else to do but just try to farm for good gear. And I'm not super interested in that, honestly. I can't wait until they actually add DLCs, like raid bosses and stuff like that. Actual things to do. But my number 1 biggest issue with Borderlands 4 is actually completely different. So they gave us a new system where we can actually replay missions that we've already beaten throughout the entire story. That's cool and all, but you know why we wanted this? Well, take a look at Borderlands 2. A lot of missions in that game have a unique mission reward at the end. These uniques are generally blue items, on occasion purple, or some E-Tech, with red text. Red text is what makes an item unique. In Borderlands 2, a lot of the uniques are way more powerful than even legendary weapons. That's why they're so sought after. But since you can only do each mission once in each playthrough, you have to choose when you want that unique very carefully. And you see, that's the major problem with this game. There are no unique items in this game besides legendaries. So there's literally no point to redoing the missions. And that's the entire problem. I was hoping that we would redo these missions to grind for a specific role on a unique reward. But no, there just aren't unique rewards besides legendaries, and even those are rare. That really sucks because one of my favorite runs to do is the unique only run, as you can see in, well, all of the other games. So that's probably my single biggest complaint besides performance about Borderlands 4. I'm guessing it's going to be quite a while before I put a ton of time into this game to do another whole run, but a couple ideas I have. Obviously, you heard me say earlier, the fishing only run. I think that would be pretty hilarious if I can figure it out early on. And, naturally, my legendary only run. The run that kind of skyrocketed my channel to where it is now. But of course, thank you all for watching. I always appreciate it, and a special thank you to my channel members. You guys are all awesome. This is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming, signing out.